Hey, be careful what you say. AI may be using it to train their models. They may even be using this. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy New Year to you. Happy. It's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong, and we are thrilled to be back for a new year of Techstrong Gang. We've got a lot of plans to shake things up a little this year, keep it relevant, though, and keep you guys out there interested and make this worthwhile for you. Um, on that note, we've got a great bunch of things to talk about today, and we have a great gang to talk about them. Let me introduce you to them. First of all, joining us, he's got his guitars back. I'm glad to see. I thought we were going to lose the guitars for the beginning of the year. He's a Futurum VP analyst, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, welcome. Happy New Year, man.
Happy 2025. Just kicking the year off right with Techstrong Gang.
2025, right? We're a quarter of a way through this century. Most of us here, with the exception of you, Bonnie, lived through much more than a quarter of the last century. That's quite a expansive time. And well, there's something to be said for getting older, I guess. But anyway, welcome, Mitch. It's great to have you on. Joining us also, he's also back home. I know he was wandering around a little bit during the holiday season, but he's home in Ohio. He's the founder, CEO of Tech Field Day, part of the Futurum Group, our friend Stephen Foskett. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
You know what? I really miss Techstrong Gang. I'm really glad to be back. I love talking about this stuff with you guys, and thanks for having me back.
You know, look, if you want to do more days here, you're more than welcome to,
Oh, I see.
Be careful what you wish
I don't miss
for.
you that much. Take it easy there.
All right.
The invite's in your calendar.
Just
Stephen.
throwing it out at you. But Stephen, it's good to have you on, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
All righty. Joining us, he's home in Harrison, New York, but he's been with us all throughout. Our Chief Content Officer and editorial driver at Techstrong Gang, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I am well, and here's a positive note for the deep freeze, but I think if I've got my calculations correct, it's less than 45 days to when pitchers and catchers report for spring training.
That's right. That's right. Down here in Florida, too. Looking forward to that. Though we still have football season. Though football season's been, let's not talk football. Let me turn now to our sustainability analyst and editor joining us here live in our Boca Raton studios, Bonnie Schneider. Hey, Bonnie, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be back as well.
It's good to have you here as always. Bonnie's usually on our Tuesday morning shows if you catch her or catch Tuesday morning. But of course, you can find a lot of her content on techstrong.tv as well as LinkedIn. All over.
And ecotechinsights.com.
Ecotechinsights.com. That's right. We have the domain back there too. So check that out. All right, gang members. Big story today. We're going to kick off on the A block is Anthropic has been making a lot of noise lately about getting out in front of all these claims, and I do mean all these claims of copyright IP infringement and bully for Anthropic. But quite frankly, when is the rest of that industry going to line up? Mike, let's kick it over to you and we'll go from there.
Yeah, it looks like a little progress is finally being made, and it may not be everything everybody wants just yet, but Anthropic has agreed through a lawsuit court case that involved the music industry where they're going to use their controls to limit a number of instances where the output might have lyrics in it that are copyrighted. The case is still proceeding on whether or not it is fair use to use copyrighted content to train an AI model, and that's still a hot debate. But it was interesting, from what I see at least, that there was some movement towards some middle ground here that maybe folks can get around, because if we can use the controls to limit the output, then we don't have to worry necessarily as much as the owners of copyrights being hurt by people who are using their content without compensating them. It's a theory, but there are flaws in the theory. A couple of them come to mind immediately. One is it's not clear the controls actually work. There's been some studies reported that Anthropic itself has shown that the LLMs will do everything they can to work their way around the controls. And then secondarily, well, let's say that somebody does wind up using lyrics or some other copyrighted content in something else. Who calls them up and says, pull that out and replace that? And, the court says they'll enforce it, but how do I actually get that repaired? And because I don't think Anthropic controls exactly who uses its output. So I don't know, Al, let's start with you, but what's your take on what's going on here?
So I'm going to put my Juris Doctorate hat on here and look at this from a legal perspective, really. So you mentioned what happens when they're guilty. What happens when they do it? Well, in legal terms, we talk remedies, right? And there's various remedies. One remedy is, and we see this in a lot of legal cases, is, hey, I'm entitled to compensatory damages, money. Makes the world go round, right? And so you use my stuff and now you got to pay me. Well, how much should I pay you? We could probably come up with a scale to measure the pound of flesh there. Number two, what you're describing, Mike, sounds more like a specific performance type of remedy, where I want you to cease and desist and remove that from your offerings. And I may or may not also want compensatory damages for what you've done to date with my IP, with my property. So a little bit of both. And that's going to be, as you mentioned, that's going to be hard. Specific performance is always the hardest of the remedies to do. Or do we set up some sort of, much like the music industry's done with Spotify, right? And the other streamers, going back to Mitch, what was the original music streaming one that broke everything with an N? Napster. The Napsters.
Or I'm
Right.
not Mitch, but I am.
No, I know you're not Mitch, Steven. I haven't gone it's only been a couple of weeks. I remember he has the beard, you don't. He has a ponytail.
And guitars.
Right? You know. But that being said, do we set up some sort of governing? And I think that might be, it's going to take some time, but that might be the solution, that we do set up some sort of governing board here because Mike, I agree with you. I don't think you can take it out of the learning process. I think that's artificial and it's going to hurt the whole thing. But I think companies should be compensated and there should be a scale put in place. And I think that's the way to do it. It's just going to take time. When I was in law school, one of my professors taught con law. And he had come from Stanford, where he taught William Rehnquist. He was the con law professor for William Rehnquist, Chief Justice Rehnquist, and Sandra Day O'Connor. That's how old I am. He was much older by the time he got to me. He was on his last legs. I can tell you I'm not going to tell you some funny stories. But anyway, he always said, when it comes to technologies like this, it takes the courts and society 3 to 5 to 7 years to catch up to technology. And technology is constantly, doesn't stand still, it's moving forward. So I wouldn't be surprised if it takes us 3 to 5 years to come to grips, or even more, with this whole, how are the AI, or the large, let's call them the hyper LLMs, the Claudes, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, how are they going to compensate? Because inevitably they are using IP that doesn't belong to them. And to think that we're going to somehow cut that out and stop that, I think you're kidding yourself. It's already baked in. Just what's the comp? And how do you set up a recording industry of America kind of scale thing that compensates people for their AI, for their IP being used.
Well, we've talked about the troll topic before, right? The patent trolls and the copyright trolls, much of that. We're already seeing in the code space companies like Tab9 coming out with provenance tools where they will tell you, they'll analyze your code base and say, where did all this come from? And did some of it come from this repository on GitHub? Is it somewhere else? So I expect we're going to see a lot of those kinds of tools available on the market, which is going to essentially putting kind of weapons in the hands of the trolls to come after for copyright violations. So I'm not sure if that's the same, if that has the same power behind it that patent violations do, but you would know better than I, Alan. But certainly we're going to have the tools in hand very quickly to tell us, is this copyright material?
I think we would sign up for a service that told us that our content was showing up somewhere else and it got there through some sort of an AI engine. I think that would be a useful capability.
But that service already exists, and all this stuff already exists, and it's not doing anything. And I think I think that's the saddest thing. This story is sad. This whole situation is sad because essentially, as Alan said, the horse is out of the barn. AI has been trained on legit material as well as copyrighted material. It's in there. This court case, if you look at the details of the specific case we're talking about with Anthropic and recording industry, they're not even saying that they're going to not produce things. What they're saying is they've got a filter in front of the AI that's going to check for plagiarism and basically kick it back if it's plagiarized. This is some weak sauce. Now, I do think that Anthropic deserves a pat on the back for being ahead of this thing. I also think that the reason they went after Anthropic first is because they're in the EU and because they seemingly care more about copyright than the rest of these people. But the truth is that none of these AI systems give a darn about copyright. They've all taken every copyrighted material. And now we're in a situation where people like us are sitting here on talking into cameras saying the horse is out of the barn. There's nothing you can do about it. We just got to accept it. Well, that sinks. I hate that. And you hate that too. Because, the truth is, I actually just looked at a system that does this. Actually, I was talking to a company called CopyLeaks. They were a plagiarism checker. They now have an AI checker as well. This stuff is incredibly widespread. I ran some Techstrong stuff through it and found not AI generated ripoffs, just blatant ripoffs across the internet, all over the place. Stuff from DevOps.com and Security Boulevard, stuff from Gestalt IT that I wrote being illegally used, improperly used all over the internet. We've done nothing about that. We have the ability to do nothing about that. It just is completely rampant. And now that's going to be happening in the AI space. That stinks. Welcome to 2025, where people rip off your stuff and there's no penalty.
Well, Stephen, I echo and agree with you, right? As a publisher and a creator of content, it costs us, I don't have to tell you, it costs money to create content, salaries, time, everything. And I'd like to be compensated for that. And deep in my brain, I'm waiting for the day where Anthropic and OpenAI and Gemini start sending me checks, because I'm sure they've used the 40-something thousand articles on DevOps.com, to train their models on DevOps. And I don't even know how many articles that have been on Security Boulevard over the years on the Security Bloggers Network and everything. And I'm looking for checks. We paid for that IP, for that material to be created. I should be compensated for it.
I've had that happen to me. I wrote 2 books, and I've definitely seen passages of my books that people have used, and they don't credit me for it. If you send, they'll recognize it. And
No, they don't.
And especially if it's another country, that's happened to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So one of the models that seems to at least try to make an effort with that is Perplexity. You go on there, they will give you footnotes from which media
sources,
right? And I think Gemini should do that, and definitely ChatGPT, because they make up a lot of stuff. So I think I'd like to know their sources.
At least citing a source and attributing attribution. But attribution's fine and dandy. I want cold hard cash.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll be honest with you. I want money.
Goodness.
I want to be compensated.
So what is your assessment of the fair use argument that they're trying to make on content?
It's a legal argument. There's an argument to be made. I don't think it's a winning argument, right? Fair use has some very specific, usually use case scenarios and patterns that it'll apply to. I don't think so. It's one thing if you're going to tell me you took a song, Here Comes the Sun, right? And you used that, but you didn't use any of the lyrics or melody or anything like that, but you used it to train my AI about, how the sun can brighten your day or whatever, right? It's another thing to kind of, you see lyrics that are getting spit out that appear to have come from that song. The first could be considered fair use, I think. The second is IP infringement. The latter is IP infringement. And but here's what I want to avoid. It shouldn't take you hiring lawyers to do this stuff, right? There's got to be a system in place, and maybe it's through technology that says, hey, this is clearly from that. Pay the man, pay the woman, pay the person, pay the entity. This is how much you should pay based upon that violation. And that's what we need to get to. Attribution's fine, but it don't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking selfishly now, right? As a publisher, we do this too, Stephen. We don't use a program yet for AI stuff, but we try to track people who are reprinting our articles without permission and stuff. And some are good about it when you write them, and some aren't. But we'll see. I mean, but as someone else said, I think it was Bonnie said, kudos to Anthropic for jumping on this. Also want to point out that in this instant case that we're talking about, they're only talking about go forward, not backward looking, right? So they're saying, well, what we did is what we did, but going forward, we're going to be better.
Yeah.
Well, they're also saying that they're out of data anyway, so they took it all already, and they don't, they're complaining that they now have to rely on synthetic data to train their AI models because they can't get access to any more new data for free, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not even using, basically, all the data that's been scraped has been scraped now. And, back to Alan's point about, that's how it is, right? They've already taken it. It's not like they can go back and, clean that up or get that out of the model or something. Now they're going to be using synthetic data. Actually, the synthetic data angle is interesting, though, because they could actually develop a clean AI using only synthetic data. And it would be clean of any copyrighted material because it would be only trained on the output of other AIs. And that reminds me of, remember in the 80s, the BIOS cloning for the IBM PC clones, the clean room. Essentially, it's the same kind of thing. So you've got the dirty AI that's generating fresh training data. And then you've got the clean AI that doesn't have any access to any copyrighted material from anyone or any scraped material from anyone. And that would be really cool. And also pretty terrible, but cool and terrible. And we would still need to, I think, have it check to make sure that it's not, plagiarizing, because these things are statistical models, and statistically, they're going to come up with plagiarized stuff. I mean, I've got a William Shakespeare quote on my mug. I bet every AI is going to be able to generate this quote spontaneously simply because it's out there in the world so widely. It's part of our consciousness and our civilization. And then to the fair use argument, I find that pretty interesting too, because if I create, well, first off, parody is protected by the US Constitution. Thank God the founders had a sense of humor. They seem to have. And, so if I create a parody song, it's completely protected. If I create a derivative work that is substantially transforms the work, it's also protected. And I could see somebody arguing that text generated from an AI based on, for example, in this case, specific musicians' lyrics or style would be protected speech under the First Amendment. I could see that being a legit argument.
Under parity, I think it would be.
Well, not
But
even parody though, but just in the style of, because I mean, I can write in the style of Mike Vizard. Well, I honestly couldn't do a good job of it, but I could try. And Mike wouldn't have anything to say about it because frankly, that's just me expressing, as long as I didn't copy him.
I'll give you an example on that. We have our Predict 2025 show, which, by the way, we moved from Thursday the 9th to Tuesday the 14th because Thursday the 9th is a national day of mourning here in the U.S. for President Jimmy Carter. But to the promo for that show, the Campy promo, as we do every year, this year's theme was The Beat Goes On, Sonny and Cher. And I actually asked the AI to write me a script in the style of the Sonny and Cher show, featuring a guy and gal, similar to Sonny and Cher, talking about Predict 2025. And if you catch the promo, it's on LinkedIn and all over. It's Kim, our COO, Kim Parker, and myself. I'm Sonny, if you couldn't tell, but if you catch it, it's written in the style. It's the same silly jokes. She makes fun of Sonny. Sonny's the straight guy, and it did a great job of in the style of Sonny and Cher. And I worried, is this too close, right? But it's parody and it's protected under parody anyway. But yeah, no, Stephen, I agree with you there, 100%.
Some of it always comes down to what is the commercial use case behind the usage of the thing, right? In your case, you're not really driving, a subscription service on your parody of Sonny and Cher, but a lot of the people who are using the output from Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever are incorporating that into a product or a service that they're selling, and that's a much different issue.
Yeah, and actually that's another point too, is that a lot of the cases that have been brought have actually been rejected because the plaintiffs failed to show any
damage.
That there wasn't any harm.
Right, any damages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to be said there too. Anyway, guys, we've exhausted our time limit on this one. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and Bonnie's going to give us a look at sustainability in 2025. Before we do, we should mention, if you're watching this and you'd like your company sponsoring Techstrong Gang, we do have sponsorships available. You can write sponsorship at techstronggroup.com and we'll have someone contact you. All righty, we'll be right back.
Modernize your business to fuel innovation and elevate customer experiences. With the Builder Community Hub, AWS and its partner network provide essential tools for transforming applications and infrastructure to fully leverage the cloud. Discover free trials, in-depth demos, and essential resources to empower DevOps engineers and developers to deliver value faster and more reliably. Visit the Builder Community Hub to learn more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Well, it's a new year, and we have new rules in effect for corporate sustainability reporting, particularly in Europe, where there's mandates now being enforced. The data was being gathered last year, but it's all due this year. So I took a closer look at what we are facing this year and some immediate deadlines that are coming up in 2025. Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Schneider with your Ecotech Analyst Insights. It's January 2025, and the European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CRSD, is now in effect. And it's not just for those overseas. The rule also applies to international firms with major European operations. Given this broad scope, many industries will be impacted, including the tech sector. Under scrutiny, data centers, as they now consume an estimated 3 to 4% of global electricity. Tech companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon must comply with these rules while managing their growing AI operations. This means carefully tracking power usage, water consumption, and heat management. Plus, tech companies based in America face the additional pressure of complying with evolving U.S. rules. Here in the States, the adoption of new SEC requirements for sustainability moved forward last year, but they are currently on hold pending legal review. These rules would demand publicly traded companies to report their greenhouse gas emissions and climate-related risks impacting their finances. The momentum for sustainability reporting is growing. For many large organizations, 2025 marks a new era of mandatory compliance. So as you can see, global tech companies will be faced with this challenge of mandatory sustainability reporting. The biggest issue from the research that I've done is this scope 3 aspect, where you're responsible for reporting all of the emissions from the supply chain, and that is extensive. So I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error going back and forth with what works and what doesn't. But another emergence just over the past few years are these new tech tools that companies can use to effectively measure emissions. And there's also lots of touch and go with that as well to see what works. So it's an ongoing, evolving situation.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be interesting. You know, we had the election certified yesterday, new administration coming in. And let's face it, these people are not big fans of government regulation. And, you know, how is this going to, now a lot of this regulation comes out of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And the EU could say, hey, you do what you want, but when you're over here or it impacts you, you're responsible for it. It's going to be an interesting kind of headbanging here a bit as we figure this out. You know, the drill baby drill crowd versus sustainability and green. So I think we're in for some turbulent times.
Yeah, and even right now, just using the term ESG has become controversial for different and sustainable funds and things like that. That what you mentioned, that's happening now. Yeah.
Bonnie, I'm curious, what's your assessment of the readiness of companies to do that reporting?
It's funny you ask, Mitch, because I just was working on that over the holiday break, and I can tell you most of them are not ready. I know that's true because of that scope 3 aspect of tracking emissions throughout the supply chain. Most of the people I talk to are by default are in sustainability, so they're aware of it, but I would say they're not, and that's one of the problems why there have been delays in this reporting. Alan mentioned, the new administration, that there was approval for reporting out of the state of California, but that's faced legal challenges, so that's on hold as well. So the readiness and the challenges, I think, is going to be an issue and delay it. This year will be a telling year to see how different companies do their reporting, what is believed to be accurate reporting, and and then get guidance from there.
I would think that somebody's writing an AI agent to generate their report for this thing somewhere, so maybe it'll get easier.
If it's right, if it's true.
We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting times. Anyway, great story on that. You know what? Bonnie mentioned earlier, ecoinsights.com. Ecotechinsights.com, excuse me. And that is the specific domain here within kind of the Techstrong jungle for the sustainability work that Bonnie does. And, this story's on there, but there's a ton of great stuff on there. And again, go check that out. It's ecotechinsights.com. And as I mentioned earlier at the break, Bonnie's always looking for new topics, working with potential sponsors who are concerned about sustainability and eco tech, and should check that out there. Let's take a break here on Techstrong TV. We're going to come back and talk about a loss for not just the cyber industry, but for the whole tech industry this past week. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, we're back. Unfortunately, part of life is dealing with loss and death. And, as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that. And I think that's part of getting older is coming to terms with one's own mortality. But it still hurts, nevertheless, when you lose good people and friends and people you respect. And especially when you lose people who go way before their time, way before their time. We lost one this week, a friend of mine, Amit Yoran. Amit, in case you didn't know, I say Amit, but my Hebrew's a little off. In Israel, they would pronounce it Amit. But Amit, I've known for 25 years, maybe. Um, he was the CEO, chairman of Tenable. Most recently, he took a leave of absence a couple months ago as he was battling cancer, which we were all thought that this was a very treatable form of cancer, and unfortunately, he lost his battle this past week, and 54 years old, which is just way too young. Let me just tell you a little bit about Amit, though. Amit is one of three brothers. Um, I'm actually very good friends with his youngest brother, Dov, who I speak with pretty regularly on text at conferences and so forth. All three brothers, they're Israeli born, came to this country as young boys. Amit went to West Point, right, and served in the Army. Um, he then started a company called RipTech, which, Mitch, I don't know if you remember RipTech, but in many ways, RipTech was the first kind of real MSSP, right? They were doing managed security. And I remember when I found out about it, I was like, what a cool idea, because most, you know, later on, it's still secure. We tried to pivot to an MSSP model. And a lot of what we did there, I took from what Amit did at RipTech. Symantec, I believe, bought RipTech early on. And Amit, when after fulfilling his thing, went his way. Amit and his brother, I think, and this is the brother I don't know, Elad, was the CFO at RipTech. And Amit went to work, with his West Point background, and he went to work in the government for the Bush administration. Uh, and this was an interesting time. We didn't, there were three people that were key cybersecurity people that helped define the federal government's role in cybersecurity. There was a guy named Howard Schmidt, who, if you don't know, you should. And he passed away. Howard probably passed away at least 5 years ago. But man, he was a giant in this industry. Second guy is a guy named Richard A. Clark. Richard's written a ton of books. He's, thank God, still with us. And if you ever get a chance to see him speak, as he does speak at many security shows and everything. Yeah. Oh, all the time there. Just, again, a treasure. And Amit started a lot of the cyber intelligence stuff for the government under Bush. And just did great work there. Left there and started a company called NetWitness, which again was kind of early. So Dove, his younger brother, started one of the first threat intelligence companies, and NetWitness was kind of that, but more. RSA itself bought NetWitness, and then sort of in that reverse merger kind of role that happens in the world of tech and startups, Amit became CEO of RSA. He ran the whole thing because cream rises to the top. He was that kind of person. He was an amazing human. Like I spoke to him a lot about cyber, obviously, but just connecting with him at a Black Hat or an RSA conference or any place where you ran into a meet. He was a real person. He wasn't a stuffed shirt. As much as he accomplished, he was just a regular person. And especially if you hung out with him and Dove, his brothers, and they're drinking and all of that. There were good times. And then he left RSA and Ron Gould, our friend Ron, left Tenable, and they brought Amit in as his successor there. And he took Tenable to heights that frankly Ron did it, right? Bigger and better even. He did an amazing job because he was just such a quality individual in every sense of the word. And it I was personally shocked when I saw the news. I didn't even write anything online because I didn't want to say anything until I knew this was not some hoax. I texted Dove and, verify this. And, my heart goes out to their whole family, 54 years old. You wonder why we all wondered this. Why does God do these things, right? When I went to St. John's University many, many, many years ago, we were lucky enough to have Eli Wiesel. This was before Eli Wiesel was quite as famous as he became. Guest lecture in one of our theology classes. And I remember someone asked him, why does God do these things? Was God sleeping at Auschwitz? Why would God allow Auschwitz, right? Or any of the concentration camps? How could there be a God? How could we respect a God who does those things? And it's the same thing here. Why does God, if there is a God, why does God let someone 54 years old, a good person, why do these things happen? And, as you get older, you can't blame God for everything is kind of the answer. But, Eli Wiesel said God was there. He was watching. And it's the same thing. So anyway, just a giant in the cybersecurity industry for certain, in the tech industry, but just a really great person. Gone way too soon. On behalf of everyone here at Techstrong, our hearts go out to Amit's family, to Dove, and the rest. I saw a lot of people online writing, condolences to Tenable. I don't know if you give a corporation condolences, but I know the people at Tenable will miss Amit because he was, for Stephen, you've done this. Mitch, you've done it. Mike, you've done it. Bonnie, you're doing it now. When you have your own company, when you're running the show, you breathe life into that every day. It's like it takes part of your life essence to run. And Amit did that with Tenable for many years now as well. So they're in good hands. They'll be fine, I'm sure. But anyway, I just didn't want this show to go through without, commenting on this and offering our condolences and good
It
thoughts.
will be missed, Alan.
We say in the Jewish religion, may their memory be a blessing. And we'll end it with that. Anyway, that's Techstrong Gang. We've got a full Techstrong TV schedule for you today. Stay tuned for that. And we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with better news and good things. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel. We're out.